The Galactic Council's emergency session had lasted 14 standard hours. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vraxian Empire slammed his four-armed form against the podium, his crystalline voice echoing through the vast chamber. "The motion is passed," he announced, his translator struggling with the emotional undertones. "Effective immediately, humans are banned from participating in any military conflicts within Council space. Their methods are deemed too extreme for civilized warfare." Ambassador Sarah Chen sat motionless in the human delegation section, her face betraying nothing. Around her, representatives from 47 species murmured their approval. The Kethari clicked, their mandibles in satisfaction. The Gorvani's tentacles writhed with what their species considered relief. "Ambassador Chen," Zethkar continued, "humanity will confine its military activities to defensive actions within your own system. Any violation will result in immediate expulsion from the Council and economic sanctions." Sarah stood slowly, her movements precise and controlled. "The human delegation acknowledges the Council's decision," she said simply, then sat back down. The other delegates seemed surprised by the lack of protest, but Sarah Chen hadn't survived 30 years of diplomacy by showing her hand prematurely. 3 months later, the Devourer swarm emerged from the galactic rim. The first reports came from the outer colonies, entire worlds going dark within hours. The swarm didn't negotiate, didn't communicate, didn't take prisoners. They consumed everything biological and stripped planets of resources before moving to the next system, like a plague of cosmic locusts. The Council's combined fleets moved to intercept them at the Kepler Junction, a critical hyperspace nexus that controlled access to the inner systems. Admiral Vostai of the Kethari led the largest military force in galactic history, 12,000 ships from 30 species, representing the pinnacle of Council military might. The battle lasted 6 hours. The swarm crushed them completely. As refugee ships poured into Council space carrying tales of horror, emergency sessions were called daily. Species after species fell to the advancing horde. The Vraxian Empire's core worlds were evacuated. The proud Kethari hegemony withdrew to their homeworld and prepared for a siege. It was during the 47th emergency session that Zethkar, his crystalline form now cracked with stress fractures, stood before the nearly empty chamber. "The swarm will reach the galactic core in 6 standard days," he announced, his voice hollow. "Our combined fleets have been reduced to 34 operational vessels. Our ground forces no longer exist." The few remaining delegates sat in stunned silence. Of the 47 species that had voted to ban humans from combat, only 19 still had functioning governments. "Perhaps," came a calm voice from the back of the chamber, "it's time to reconsider previous decisions." All heads turned to see Ambassador Sarah Chen walking down the aisle. She moved with the same unhurried pace she'd maintained for decades, but something in her eyes had changed. "The human delegation formally requests permission to deploy a single military advisor to assess the situation," she announced. Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. "Ambassador, with respect, what can one human possibly accomplish that our combined armies could not?" Sarah smiled, and for the first time in his long career, Zethkar found a human expression truly terrifying. "You banned us from combat because our methods were too extreme," she said quietly. "You never asked why we developed those methods in the first place." 48 hours later, Master Sergeant Maria Rodriguez stepped off a small human transport onto the Kethari homeworld. She carried no weapons, wore no armor, just standard military fatigues and a small backpack. The Kethari honor guard sent to escort her looked puzzled. "Where is your equipment?" Admiral Kesithri asked through a translator. "Your army?" Rodriguez shouldered her pack and looked up at the massive alien admiral. "I am the equipment," she said simply. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Though the full details remained classified for decades, the official report stated that Sergeant Rodriguez conducted reconnaissance missions behind swarm lines. They mentioned strategic disruptions and asymmetric warfare tactics. They didn't mention that she had been raised in the tunnels beneath New Detroit, where humans had fought a 30-year war against an AI uprising using nothing but cunning and improvised weapons. They didn't mention her training with the Terran Special Operations Division, where candidates learned to survive in environments that would kill most species within minutes. Most importantly, they didn't mention what she found when she infiltrated the swarm's command structure. The Devourer swarm, for all their terrifying efficiency, had one critical weakness. They were a hive mind. They had evolved in isolation, never facing an enemy capable of individual initiative. Their entire strategy relied on overwhelming force and predictable resistance patterns. They had never faced a guerrilla fighter. Rodriguez spent 3 days moving through the swarm's massive bioships, invisible to their collective consciousness. She studied their biology, their command structure, their reproduction cycles. Then she began her work. She didn't fight the swarm directly. That would have been suicide. Instead, she introduced chaos into their perfect order. A severed neural cluster here, a redirected pheromone signal there. She turned their own communication systems against them, spreading conflicting orders through their network. The hive, mind evolved for perfect coordination, began to tear itself apart. The first signs appeared on the 3rd day. Swarm ships began firing on each other. Their perfect formations dissolved into chaotic free-for-alls. Entire fleets turned back toward the rim, following corrupted migration signals. Within a week, the swarm had retreated to their home galaxy, their collective consciousness shattered, and their expansion permanently halted. Sergeant Rodriguez returned to the council chambers 12 days after she had left, still wearing the same fatigues, still carrying the same small pack. Ambassador Zethkar, his crystalline form now repaired and gleaming, stood to address her. "Sergeant Rodriguez," he began formally, "the Galactic Council wishes to express its gratitude for your service. Perhaps we were hasty in our previous assessment of human military capabilities." Rodriguez nodded politely. "No offense taken, sir. You weren't wrong about our methods being extreme. You just forgot that sometimes extreme problems require extreme solutions." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Ambassador, the next time you want to ban humans from doing something, you might want to ask yourself why we got so good at it in the first place." As her footsteps echoed through the chamber, Ambassador Chen stood and addressed the council. "The human delegation moves to table all previous military restrictions," she announced. "Any objections?" The silence was deafening. Outside the chamber, Rodriguez boarded her transport and activated her comm unit. "Command, this is Ghost 7, mission complete. Council relations normalized, returning to base." "Copy that, Ghost 7, came the reply. "How was the vacation?" Rodriguez smiled as she settled into her seat. "Quiet, very quiet." The transport lifted off into the void, carrying with it the reminder that in a galaxy full of warriors, sometimes it only takes one soldier to end a war.